We're moving into our next stage now, so we have a series of presentations followed by a panel discussion. So I'd like to invite onto the stage our collaborators today on our talks and panel discussion. So today we have Zahra Ravenscroft, Environment Agency Strategic Partnerships Manager for Flood and Coastal Risk Management. We have Jeremy Garside, the Chief Executive of the Tees Valley Wildlife Trust. We have Catherine Corrigan, Senior Advisor, Outreach and Partnerships Connecting People with Nature Programme of Natural England. And from the Net Zero and Nature team, John Hart, Strategic Stakeholder Manager for the North East Net Zero Hub, Department of Energy Security and Net Zero, directed organisation which supports local authorities across the region to deliver on their net zero ambitions. Prior to this, he coordinated north of the regional net zero strategy. And he's joined by Claire Ross, Net Zero Programme's lead, Project Director for the Trees on Tees Valley Combined Authority. And our discussion panel is going to be chaired by Professor Sarah Perks from MEMA and the School of Arts and Creative Industries at Teesside University. Sarah leads the University's Centre for Culture and Creativity, including Natural Futures, a collaborative research project on creative nature recovery and eco-psychology.
Hello everyone, I'm Zahra from the Environment Agency and I'm absolutely delighted to be here at my first Tees Nature Conference, and what a follow-up. I think we'll be seeing Tristan up there with David Attenborough and Greta Thunberg in the future. How inspirational he really was. So I feel incredibly lucky to have spent the last 24 years working on the North East coast, and for the last 2 of those specifically focused on the tidal Tees estuary. And during the last 2 years, I've been just blown away by the dedication, enthusiasm and passion of probably many of you in this room today who are working in Teesside to protect and restore native habitats, while also supporting green growth. And that is no easy feat. That is really, really difficult to do. And habitat restoration and species recovery has never been easy, as many of you here will know. Throwing global recession, new policy implementation, and the biggest challenge humanity has ever faced, climate change, and the task can seem almost insurmountable. Now, climate change is not a new concept. Scientists have been warning us about the consequences of global warming for decades. And in 2008, I was at a conference with a really well-respected marine biologist, and it was at this moment that she warned that we were at the tipping point for tropical coral reef survival. And it really was the emotion with which she spoke that really sort of resonated with me and struck a chord. And I remember it so clearly because it was at this precise moment that I really comprehended truly what was at stake. And then just over a week ago, I learned that at this exact moment, she is actually in the Chagos Islands leading a rescue mission to remove the last 12 remaining brain corals and bring them back to the UK. And she's doing that ahead of the predicted El Nino event that will see sea temperature rise, and almost certainly the extinction of these corals if they weren't removed. So really the unthinkable is now reality for the communities living on this island. And this news was followed by, almost a couple of days later, by the headline last week of the marine heat wave off the northeast coast, where the Met Office reported that global sea surface temperatures had reached an all-time high, with temperatures as much as 5 degrees higher than the average for this time of year. And marine heat waves such as this are unheard of in the North Atlantic. And the impacts of this temperature increase are not yet known. However, we do know they can cause mass mortalities. We do know they can impact habitats, and we do know they can reduce the ability of the ocean to absorb carbon. And all of these will have knock-on effects, societal effects. And at the moment, we're trying to gather data at the Environment Agency to record or look for trends. And climate scientists, I read, have warned that these high temperatures are mainly driven by the unprecedented high rates of human-induced warming. So when I promise this talk does get cheerier as well. When I hear all too frequent updates such as these, it reminds me of what a globally important role Teesside has to play in tackling the climate emergency, and how really to do that right, and as Timothy mentioned, to do that with nature at the heart of our decision making, that's only going to be possible with the collaboration, the knowledge and the dedication of everyone here in this room today. So what can we do, and how can we work together to build net zero, nature positive communities? And by nature positive, I mean that restoring habitats and recovering species is just as important as addressing global warming. We cannot only focus our energies on a net zero agenda without halting the rate of biodiversity loss, then the outlook is really quite bleak. Currently, the UK is the bottom of the G7 nations in terms of nature depletion, and in the bottom 10% of all countries in the world, which are really sobering facts. Now, Teesside itself, although compact, has incredibly varied landscapes, from hectares of protected coastal salt marsh to ancient woodland and upland heath. And these habitats are home to magnificent wildlife and are globally important to many species that migrate here to feed and mate. However, 200 years of industrialisation, urbanisation, changes in farming practice have brought prosperity to Teesside, but have also resulted in the loss of high-value habitat. Historic maps of the estuary indicate a 93% loss of mudflat, sandbank and salt marsh due to agriculture and during the port expansion. And this really carried on till quite late, until the 1970s, which I was really surprised to learn about. So what are we doing? I'm just going to tell you a little bit about some of the stuff we're doing at the Environment Agency. So we've invested 30 million in our current 6-year programme invested in flood resilience projects on the Tees estuary, known as Tees Tidelands. And this programme will provide flood protection to the communities of Teesside, while also restoring and protecting habitats through sustainable project delivery, so a move away from those hard-engineered flood defences. The programme is delivered in collaboration with private and public sectors, and we've already attracted over 6 million of private investment. Natural capital accounting we're using to measure the societal benefits provided by these projects, such as health, well-being, clean water, clean air, just to name a few. And the initial assessments we've done are encouraging, and the financial value of the benefits is actually dwarfing that initial investment. So a single project in Greetham, which is currently totaling about 25 million, will provide benefits of more than 750 million. And we expect that figure to grow as we sort of account for the habitat change as the project develops. So restoring coastal habitat and removing tidal barriers to renaturalise the estuary is really at the core of this programme. But also we're looking at a new footpath which will connect communities to this beautiful and previously inaccessible landscape. And that is really just as exciting as the habitat restoration. So delivery started, and I'm absolutely delighted to say that the first completed project, which is the removal of Ormsby Barrage, was recognised by the Institute of Civil Engineers and was awarded the Robert Stevenson Award for delivering sustainable net zero scheme. And if you want to hear more information about the programme, if you want to talk about collaborations or getting involved, then my colleagues are in the education space, so please do go and talk to them. So this is just one example of humans working with nature, not against it. And if nature-based solutions were embedded in all elements of capital infrastructure investment, then we would see huge, huge benefits for climate and biodiversity. Elizabeth Maruma-Marema, Assistant Secretary-General of the United Nations, said in 2022, protecting nature and increasing biodiversity could generate $10 trillion per year and create 400 million new jobs. Tony Juniper was also quoted in 2021 in an IUCN paper as saying that 10 times more jobs are created in the nature recovery sector than in the fossil fuel industry for the same investment. So that's something to hold on to. Those are staggering and optimistic figures. I just want to make one small point, though. As we see a growth in environmental jobs, we all have a collective responsibility to ensure that these are equitable and that the employees working in these sectors have wages that are comparable to those in industry. Just a small point I wanted to make. So nature is a valuable asset which we need to recognise and invest in. However, without the evidence and mechanisms in place to do this, it can in some cases be very difficult to attract investment, which allows us to deliver habitat recovery at scale. Now, I'm delighted to say that 2 projects in Teesside have received funding from the Flood and Coastal Innovation Programme to develop better ways of improving the nation's resilience and ability to adapt to flooding and coastal change. And they're doing that by providing a toolkit, tools that will allow us to upscale these sustainable nature-based solutions. Now, Stronger Shores will pilot, which is one of the projects, will pilot coastal habitat restoration of seagrass meadows, kelp beds, and native oyster reefs. And these habitats will be monitored to quantify the coastal resilience properties they provide, such as wave dissipation and sediment stabilisation. As well as this, additional wider benefits, such as water quality improvements, biodiversity gain, and carbon storage will also be valued. So why is that important? Why are we doing that? Well, in the UK, we've lost 95% of seagrass meadows and 98% of native oyster reefs. And unfortunately, in Teesside, that's 100% of those 2 habitats. Historic maps, if you look at them, show that on the northeast coast, we had an oyster reef that lined the entire length of the coast, and that has been extinct for over 150 years. So the loss of these habitats has resulted in the loss of natural coastal protection that we would have received for free. And the results of this project have the potential to revolutionise our approach to coastal resilience and provide investable propositions to businesses and finance sectors that would see restoration at scale that we really have not witnessed yet in the UK. It's a really exciting project. And the second project, delivered by Stockton Council, will increase the resilience to flooding for residents in Port Clarence, a community that has suffered in the past from tidal flooding. And it's going to deliver a demonstrator site to show how biodiversity net gain can help restore valuable intertidal habitat in the estuary. Now, it's going to use the biodiversity units to help set up a biodiversity bank for the estuary, providing a mechanism to reinvest any income generated through sales to fund further habitat restoration. And pioneering this approach in Teesside will set an example for the rest of the country. So again, really exciting. And both project teams are here today, and I encourage you to visit their stores, visit the workshops, and chat to them. So we know that healthy nature can help protect us from the effects of climate change, and we know we have the greatest ally on our side, which is nature. And now we need to come together to collaborate, share information, ideas, resources, so that we can deliver at scale. We're presented with a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to pioneer ways of working that support sustainable green growth and nature recovery on Teesside. And I absolutely feel privileged to open this session where we're going to hear from a range of absolutely fantastic speakers. Thank you very much.